today is the first day of the conference, and this is our second session of the day. And I'm delighted to be joined by David Tompkins, President of Expat Financial. We'll be talking about insurance considerations and solutions for US expats in 2024. Thank you very much for joining us, David, and how are you today?
Oh, very good, thanks. Very good. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, before we start, please bear in mind, our audience, that the information presented is for general educational purposes only. You should always seek your own personalized financial advice. David will be answering your questions at the end, so please add them in the Q&A pop-up at the foot of your screen whenever you think of them, and we'll try to answer them all, time permitting, after the presentation. So without further ado, over to you, David.
Yes, I appreciate you having me. I'll just share the screen here quickly. Second. Yes, so welcome everyone. So today we're going to talk about insurance considerations for and solutions for American expats in 2024. It's David Tompkins. I'm president of TFG Global Insurance Solutions, and we own and operate expatfinancial.com, which is where all our plans are located for variety of insurance products, which we'll get into in a minute. I've been in the insurance business since around 1991 and started in the expat field in around 2000, mostly with corporate clients, but then shortly thereafter we started getting a lot of requests from individual expats, global nomads that were moving abroad, so we expanded that to individual expats. And we've become, I think, quite a leader in sourcing global insurance solutions for expatriates around pretty much everywhere in the world. Right, so again, a bit about Expat Financial, as I noted. We've basically act as an insurance brokers or agents or consultants. We work with a wide range of global insurance companies around the globe. We've become a highly respected authority on the subject of international risk. Again, we have a corporate clientele with some of the larger companies around the world, but also we work with, as I say, individual expatriates and global nomads, especially a lot of Americans. And that's our website, again, is expat, E-X-P-A-T, financial.com. Our corporate site is TFG Global with 2 Gs. So work ahead. So the insurance plans that we generally offer to American expats, and these would be people that are living abroad for at least 180 days per year, have some sort of residence overseas, and are going to be spending at least a year or more abroad. Generally under that, they're going to retain all their domestic coverage back in the US, and they're just going to get travel medical insurance. But if they are true expats or global nomads that are, non-residents of the US, then we can almost always assist. And the main plans that we would be offering would be the big one, which is the most popular, which would be global health insurance, then life insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, short for AD&D, and also disability insurance. Disability insurance would generally be offered to someone who's employed somewhere and they don't have any existing disability insurance from their employer. And that's usually payable in the event of a sickness or accident after a certain number of waiting period. So who buys a global health plan? Generally, this is going to be a lot of Americans who are living abroad for work, extended travel, or retirement. Again, global nomads, expats, digital nomads, whatever you want to call them, like yourselves. And again, as I noted, these are expats who spend more than 6 months abroad and have a residence outside the US of A. Again, with these global health plans, they can't cover Americans who are residing in the USA and are going to stay there. You really have to provide an address outside of the USA and plan to spend more than 6 months, 180 days abroad. Otherwise, these plans can't cover, again, they can't cover American residents, people that are going to just stay in the United States. It could cover some non-US citizens coming to the US, but that's another story. The coverage will cease if an American expat moves back to the USA and will spend more than 6 months there. Again, I'll probably repeat this a few times, but these are offshore global health plans. They're not locally compliant. They're for expats only, for people living abroad. So it's expected for all these plans that if you move back to the US at renewal, you say you're going to spend less than 6 months abroad, then the coverage will not be renewable, and that's for regulatory reasons. So why do American expats buy global health coverage? Because they're living abroad, and U.S. healthcare or Medicare won't cover them. There's some exceptions for individual or corporate policies, but generally those plans won't cover them unless they're on a corporate global benefit plan that is covering you. So if you have that, then you probably don't need individual healthcare as an expat. But again, a lot of people are going abroad without an employer, or maybe the employer will ask you to get your own coverage. And obviously, the second point is to preserve your finances should you experience a medical condition or accident. And as you know, I mean, generally medical expenses are not as high outside of the U.S. as in the U.S., but you'd be surprised. Certain countries, China is a good example. You would think it would be really cheap to get medical care there, but often that is definitely not the case. It can be extremely expensive. So you want to preserve those finances by having adequate global health care. As well, a third point would be if you're going to a country, the local health insurance at the expat destination might not even be available to expats. And another reason would be these days, a lot of countries such as Thailand, for example, or Spain, sometimes even Italy, they will require you to have some sort of global health care of some sort to get your visa, permanent visa there. And they'll have certain conditions on the coverage, but generally, they want it to cover at least hospital-related coverage, evacuation, with or without a deductible. Sometimes they'll specify, but sometimes the limits are extremely low, and these global health plans usually have much higher limits than what they require for the visa. Another reason would be you might be going to a country where the local insurance coverage and medical care is substandard, especially in developing countries. So you want a health plan that's going to cover medical services not only locally, but regionally and globally, that will give you the best standard of care. They also, again, especially for American expats, is that not all, but a good portion will want a global medical plan that will cover them back, not only regionally and where they're at their expat destination, but back home in the USA. And again, these plans will allow you to spend about 6 months back in the US. And again, many expats want coverage that is portable to another destination, because you might go to, for example, to Germany and get the local hub coverage there. It might be perfectly fine. Obviously, it's going to be probably pretty inexpensive. But what if you move to another destination, you've developed a pre-existing condition? You might find it much more difficult to get global health care. And again, with these global health cares, they're generally very portable, allowing you to move from one destination to another. So that's a big reason why people get these global healthcare plans. So how are the premiums determined by the insurers that we work with? Obviously, age is a big one. Your citizenship, your coverage area. So usually with these international health insurance plans, they will have two choices of coverage areas. One will be global excluding the US, which a surprising number of Americans choose, or it'll be global including the United States. There's a few providers we work with that will do Africa only if you're in Africa, but for the most part, it's really like two main coverage areas. The other big one is your country of residence, because that has a big impact on costs. I mean, if you're in Hong Kong or China, Singapore, somewhere like that, it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you're in, could be like Thailand, or even somewhere in Europe. It really depends on where your country of residence will determine the premiums. Obviously, the coverage level, you can usually choose from 3 or more levels. Could be very basic, could be a mid-range plan, like we call it, could be like a gold level or platinum or deluxe. The higher the coverage level, the higher the cost, the more you're covered for, of course. And there are a few plans, one carrier that we have that has the ability to cover you just in your expat destination only, especially if you're American. And it's, they have a very entry-level basic coverage with a lower maximum. So that's something to think about. Deductible level is a big one. The bigger deductible is essentially what you pay before the insurance kicks in. And that means that the higher the deductible, so if you have a $10,000 deductible, your premium's going to be a lot cheaper than if you have to have a $1,000 deductible. So you're willing to take on a little bit more of the risk. If there's a claim, a lot of people will do that, especially if they're in a country where they have, more basic, more inexpensive medical costs. And I should also mention that a lot of expats will sometimes choose hospital-only coverage, because usually these plans, I'll probably repeat myself, but basically they'll have a hospital plan that's going to cover inpatient care, anything done in a hospital. Then there'll be outpatient care. That's stuff done outside a hospital, like specialists, scans, MRIs outside a hospital, going to doctor visits. Then there's wellness coverage as well. So some people will get just a hospital only with a large deductible for a lower premium. Gender can, for some plans, have an impact, but really depends. Obviously, the options you choose, as I mentioned, you might get hospital only, you might add outpatient wellness, which is like adding doctor's visits, checkups, that type of thing. You might add vision and dental, for example, as well as medical evacuation. So it really depends on that as well. The other thing is your health status. And I should mention that with these individual global health plans, the coverage is subject to your medical history. So it's not like they're going to be having you go through a doctor's medical like that, but there will be medical questions that you would complete online or with the insurance provider. And they would involve usually medical questions about your history, recent and otherwise. And again, you always have to provide as clear information as possible on that medical history, because when you leave you tell them about a condition and you don't really provide any details, these underwriters are always going to think the worst. So you want to provide as detailed information as possible for them to underwrite the risk. So when they go through underwriting, they may either have three ways they can go. They'll either charge an additional premium, they'll exclude the pre-existing condition, or unfortunately, they would decline. So that's something to think of. Whereas if you were under a corporate global health plan that we sometimes source for our corporate policy, where they can spread the risk amongst many people, then those kind of plans would generally cover people regardless, depending on the number of people covered. Obviously, another factor would be the insurer that you choose. So some insurers are more than others, but in general, you get what you pay for. The more comprehensive the coverage and obviously reputable the insurer dealing with and capable, the higher the premium's going to be. So I've kind of gone through this already, but again, what's included in most health plans, again, hospital only is the first option. That's the thing you have to get. You can't get like dental only or outpatient only. You can have the outpatient care, wellness, medical evacuation. That's certainly important if you are going to a country where medical services are not that great. With medical evacuations, you can't choose to be evacuated. It has to be medically necessary, approved by the insurer, and with the guidance of the local medical staff where you're at. And it's not like they're going to evacuate you back to the US. They're going to evacuate you to the nearest center of medical excellence. The fourth The point there would be dental and vision. We don't see a lot of expats add this, but some do. But more than often than not, they will just self-insure dental and vision care. And that would be like your basic um, services with a dentist, such as cleaning, scaling, that type of thing. Possibly some restorative crowns and bridges, and orthodontics for children. Maternity coverage, that's a big one. So in some of these plans, they will just exclude pregnancy outright. Whereas if you get a higher tier of coverage, they will cover pregnancy after a 12-month waiting period. And I should note that with that 12, or sometimes it's a 9-month waiting period, that cannot be waived. It's just impossible. They will not do it. If you're under a corporate plan, generally they would cover pregnancy without a waiting period. But with these individual policies, there is a waiting period of at least 9 or 12 months. And again, it cannot be waived. Another thing that's becoming more popular with global nomads and expats is telehealth. And telehealth is basically where you can contact the insurer or their provider and get a doctor or nurse's medical advice on more minor conditions where you don't really want to go to see a doctor or go to a hospital unnecessarily. And this is to the advantage of both the patient or client as well as the insurer, because it avoids unnecessary visits. But it's also very convenient. Became much more popular of a service during COVID for obvious reasons. Again, how to lower your health insurance premiums. Obviously, you choose a lower deductible if you want to increase your premiums. I should have said if you want a higher deductible, that will lower your premiums. Asking for a discount, always advisable. With one of our providers, which we'll get into later, which is Cigna, if you're getting a quote via our website, they will automatically provide pretty much always for our clients some sort of discount, usually 5%, sometimes 10%, depending on the coverage that you're getting. If you pay your premium annually versus monthly, you'll often get about a 10% discount. You can also pay quarterly or semi-annually for some of these providers, but most people either pay monthly or annually. Obviously, you can get a hospital-only plan, which we mentioned, if you want the more bare bones kind of policy. Or you can go with a lower level of coverage. You might go with, for example, a silver versus a gold or platinum level. The lower level coverage will just have lower maximums. Might have only a $1 million maximum versus unlimited maximum for medical care. So some common questions from American expats. Will the insurer cover my pre-existing conditions? Well, the short answer to that would be it really depends. Depends on the condition. If someone, I usually, having been in the business for a long time, I usually have a pretty good idea if someone tells me what their pre-existing conditions are, whether or not they'll be covered. I mean, if someone has asthma or high blood pressure, there's a very good chance that they would probably cover it if it's controlled. If they've had cancer, probably in the last 5 years, there's a good chance they'll either exclude the condition or decline. If you have back pain, more often than not, they're just going to exclude it. So a lot of policies do get issued with exclusions, but it's one of those situations where you really have to ask yourself, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. A lot of people will say, well, we sometimes will try to fight it for you, depending on the condition, and try to get it covered, but more often than not, it's going to be excluded, and it's best just at least get the policy anyway. But I should note it before I forget that if you have existing global health insurance and you have a pre-existing condition that's being covered, I would not recommend moving to a new insurer unless you absolutely have to. And certainly do not cancel that existing coverage if you have ongoing medical conditions, and you're probably best to stay where you are. The other question is, should I get a plan that includes the USA? Well, really depends. Most of these plans that exclude the USA will provide some emergency only coverage for the USA, usually up to around, it could be up to 60 or 30 days per annual year, per year, calendar policy year, with a certain number of days per visit. You have to ask yourself, if you get a serious condition, are you going to go back to the USA for treatment? Can you get it? Do you think you could get the treatment locally quite well? For one of the providers we use, the cost to cover the USA for American expats is actually quite low compared to their compatriot insurers. It might only add like 20%, whereas some of the other insurers, it would add like 50%. So really, that's a tricky one. Obviously, if you go back to the USA permanently, you would be able to get onto I would hope, a domestic plan there via the health exchange, and go that route. But again, it's one of those, like, do you include or do you not? That's really a personal decision that we can certainly help you with. How do I make a claim? Generally, if it's a serious medical claim that is going to be where you're going to be going to a hospital, you would definitely want to contact the insurance company to provide, and they're always, the good insurers will have a 24/7 claims line, and you would request a guarantee of payment, especially if you're going to a hospital outside the medical network, and they would deal with the hospital, give them that guarantee of payment for a valid claim, obviously, and that would allow them to conduct the medical care that you would require. If it's a smaller claim, like an outpatient claim that's outside their medical network, generally you would take a copy of that claim and submit it via their app or via the computer, via their portal, and submit it that way. If you're getting a claim and you have coverage in the US, more than likely you would check the medical network for that insurer to see if that hospital or doctor or pharmacy is in their network. The same when you're going abroad. If you're an existing client, you can go into the insurer's portal, go through, pick the country, the city, and they'll give you a list of providers in that medical network. But for most insurers, you don't have to go in their medical network. Certainly, especially if you're getting medical services outside the US. It's a little more convenient if you do go within their network. For healthcare, can this plan cover me for life? Well, it depends on the insurer. Some insurers will only cover you to age 65 or 75. Some of our insurers we work with will cover you for life as long as you're an expat. Another question I didn't add on there is, what is the age limit for applying? Again, some insurers will only cover expats who are applying initially up to age 69 or 65, depends on the insurer. We have one insurer that we work with quite a bit. They will cover expats of any nationality. So not any nationality, any age, assuming they can pass the medical underwriting. But again, that particular insurer is very good if you're becoming a retired expat, especially you're going to be abroad for the long haul. It's important to choose a global health provider that's going to cover you for life. Will the premiums increase with age? Most definitely. They go up every year. Some are age banded to every 5 years. And then there's a bigger jump, but most will go up every year with age. How much will it cost? Again, it really depends on so many factors. Are you choosing hospital only? What level of coverage you're doing? Are you including the US? Your age, nationality, where you're residing? Quite a few options. It's almost unlimited. What is the normal inflation for expat healthcare? Unfortunately, it's pretty high. It's usually 9% on average, but it could be higher. It's not like regular inflation, which at present's like maybe 3 or 4%. Healthcare inflation has been for a long time in the high single digits or double digits. And that's something that's just not going to change in the foreseeable future. So something to think about. Another question: should I get a local plan? Um, if if you can, it's certainly going to be less expensive. But again, you have to ask yourself, just how good is it? Do you want to be able to get healthcare outside that expat destination? What if you move? How good is the local plan? What if I want to get treatment back in the U.S.? Um, really depends on obviously on the costs. Um, is there a cost to going through our website, Expat Financial via TFG Global? Absolutely not. It's the same. The insurers charge the same premiums regardless of whether we're involved or not. And one of the big advantages to working with um, a broker like ourselves is that if there's ever an issue or a claims issue or service issue or anything like that, we're there to advocate on your behalf. And we have for lots of clients, because no insurer is perfect. Some are better than others, obviously, but the having someone in the background that it's kind of like an insurance policy on your insurance, that we're there to advocate on your behalf if there's ever a problem. Are any of these global health plans for expatriates on the individual basis COBRA or ACA compliant? No, because they are offshore global health plans. If you want to, you might, if you want something that is ACA COBRA compliant, then you're probably going to try to maintain domestic healthcare in the U.S. somehow, or stay in the U.S. So how do I buy expat healthcare? Pretty simple, actually. You can get a quote via our website, Expat Financial, fill in a form, or with our most popular insurer, which is Cigna. You can get a quote right online, or you can contact us and really fulfill the product right online. And they will even contact our clients that have got a quote via our website and walk them through it with our assistance. Or you can give us an email, chat, phone to discuss your unique requirements. You can also apply if you're already abroad. So it's not like you can apply. You have already gone abroad. You don't have healthcare, or maybe have not so good healthcare coverage. You want to get a new policy. You can apply if you're already abroad. That's not a problem. And you can get approved as long as you're again in decent health. But again, if you're in the United States at present, almost all the expat insurers won't let you apply until 45 days prior to moving abroad, or again, already moving abroad, because they don't want to be seen as covering American residents staying in the United States. But there's no problem getting a quote via our website. And just for informational purposes, you can save the quote and reactivate it 45 days prior and go on from there. So I knew there'd be some questions about costs, so I just took an example from our most popular and most reputable and capable global insurer, which is Cigna. So I did a quote for them for a 46-year-old US expat in Panama. So you can look at the monthly cost, excluding the United States, for their silver level of coverage. And the cost was around $590 per month, or if you paid annually, I think it's around that equals $7,000. But it'd be a little less again if you paid annually. The gold plan, which is usually like a 2 million maximum for hospital related, versus 1 million with silver. You've got outpatient care, which had a higher maximum there. Medical evacuation and crisis assistance. Again, that's if you need to be evacuated to somewhere where they, for some reason they can't provide medically necessary treatment in Panama, which is a dove. So, I mean, if a place like Panama, it is excellent medical care. It's unlikely that you would need to be evacuated, and that's probably why the evacuation premium there is so low. If you're in a place which is, doesn't have very good health care, in that region or country, then more than likely the evacuation premium is going to be higher. You got vision and dental as well. That's for the gold premium, it's around 121. And then you go to their platinum, it's 481 for hospital only. And again, that's with a zero deductible. Outpatient, again, with zero deductible, evacuation, health and well-being. If you add the US cover, that would add another 261 to the premium for the platinum level. And that with that platinum level, that's like pretty much unlimited for most of the services in hospital, and certainly outpatient would be like pharmacy would you have an unlimited maximum, whereas with the gold plan it would have a much lower maximum. Here's a 46-year-old American expat in Spain. So it gives you an idea. It's around 418 per month for the silver plan. Gold plan, 600, again, excluding the US. Adding US healthcare for that plan is another $123. And again, for the platinum plan, it's 823. If you include the vision and dental, health and well-being, evacuation. But again, you can choose, the gold plan, hospital only if you want. And you can, if you increase the deductible, that's going to lower the premium a little bit as well. These are some of the insurers that we deal with, like William Russell, International Medical Group, GeoBlue. GeoBlue is, they're very good. They would be like US. They pretty much only cover American expats only. But if you're, and then we've got Now International, Allianz, and of course Cigna, which I noted. There's probably I would say our most premier global health provider would be Cigna International, and they are totally separate from Cigna USA. It's a totally different platform, and they are headquartered primarily out of the UK, but some of the service people are also in the UAE. So some final tips again for expats on the healthcare system front. Don't cancel your coverage if you have a plan that's covering, especially if you have ongoing medical treatment, and don't cancel it until you have the new healthcare approved, paid, and in place. So just be really careful about canceling existing coverage. In most cases, you get what you pay for, as I noted. Get medical evacuation coverage if you're living in a region with marginal healthcare. I would, again, obviously important to go with a reputable carrier that's going to be there for the long haul. Provide your full medical history when applying. Be truthful, obviously, because if there's any sort of situation where you're not providing a full disclosure, that can give them a reason to cancel the coverage in the future. Again, what if I get a policy with a medical exclusion? It's something you can talk to us about, but more than often, if you're going abroad, you don't have an existing coverage, you just have to ask, is that medical exclusion going to be a main, if it's just a backache, ongoing back issue, can I live with that not being covered? Because generally, if one insurer says they're not going to cover it on the expat front, more than likely, highly likely that the other insurer won't. Again, for those that would like, we can send you our international health insurance guide, which kind of gives you the nitty-gritty of a kind of easy guide to buying international healthcare as an expat. And it certainly goes through all of what I've noted already, but a little bit more detail and user-friendly. So getting on to other things, we spent a lot of time on the healthcare front. What about life and disability insurance? For expats, unfortunately, there's limited choices available. If you have existing life and disability insurance that you purchased in the United States, definitely keep it in place. Don't cancel it. Because especially since the life insurance premiums for expats are much higher for expats. So if you have an existing life insurance policy that you bought previous to moving abroad or about to move abroad, keep it in place if at all possible, and just make sure that it's going to cover you abroad. But if you've gone abroad, because these plans can't be purchased if you're in the United States for the expat life and disability, and you need life insurance, again, there's unfortunately limited choices and providers that do it that I would trust. Some are like on a year-to-year basis, so they have a life insurance that can cover you for up to around $1.5 or $2 million US dollars or euro, and the premiums go up with age. And there is one other insurer that we deal with that's an offshore expat provider that will do like a 10 or 20 or 30-year term life plan. But I haven't seen any expat life insurance plans that will cover Americans for whole life or universal life products. They're just not available, in my opinion. For if you are employed as an expat and you don't have existing disability insurance, then we have one excellent provider that can do life and or international disability insurance coverage. And it's pretty similar to what an employer would offer, in that it will have a 3-month or 6-month waiting period after a disability for sickness or injury, and it will cover you up to age 65, assuming you're still disabled, usually covering you for your own occupation for which you're reasonably suited for about 2 years. And then after that, it's usually any occupation. But again, I'm a big believer in disability insurance because it's probably it's definitely much more likely than someone dying before age 65. And your ability to earn your income is, I think, one of your biggest and most important assets. So again, expat insurance, we're primarily, for us at least, we're in the expat life, expat health, and life and disability insurance side. We also do travel insurance for those that need it that are just going abroad for short term as well. Just a quick legal disclosure. And again, there's our website. Our general email is the info@tfgglobal.com. But you can also reach us again at Expat Financial, which is right here. So thank you very much, everyone. And I guess we'll have some questions. Here you go.
Thank you very much, David. That was a fantastic presentation. So let's move on. There are lots of questions. Some of them you've answered already. Inevitably, you went through lots of common questions. We'll try and get through them all in the time we have.
Sure. Awesome.
So, one thing, would you be so kind as to stop screen sharing? Because I think that
sure, I'll do that.
And we'll get bigger for our audience, which is, I think, helpful. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. So first question, do any insurers, I think you did cover this, do any insurers your company represents offer individual health plans with coverage for pre-existing conditions?
Yeah, they're not going to cover all pre-existing conditions. They'll cover some. It really, unfortunately, really depends on the pre-existing condition. If they send me an email and give me some quick medical history, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not the one who makes the decision on this. I can, give them my opinion. And in some cases, I can send the details that I'm provided to the insurer, and they can give me a general idea. The worst, or there's no harm in applying and seeing what they say. But again, if someone's had a recent, they're on, if they're getting treatment now, they're not going to cover that person at all. If it's like someone's got like high blood pressure, they're taking some blood pressure pills, more than often than not, I would say that they would be covered. So it really, really depends. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I've had people that have been at a hospital and they want insurance. I'm no joke. Sorry, it's not possible. You're at the hospital. It's sad to say, but again, these are offshore global health insurance policies. they're meant for people living abroad, and they are subject to medical underwriting. There are a few insurers that we've worked with that have the option, I should have mentioned, of having no medical underwriting. But it really means that in those cases, they are not going to cover pre-existing conditions at all. So it's their way of doing simple underwriting. So they're a little bit more basic. So hopefully I've answered that.
Thank you. Another question, and it says, is it possible for a US expat to get umbrella liability insurance? You said, for example, it's hard to get auto insurance for a long-term car rental lease in the USA as one is living abroad. I guess the question is about when you buy insurance as an expat, are you covered if you spend time back in the US?
Well, that's more of a question related to car. Like where I'm only deal with life, health, and disability, and some travel insurance. These global health plans are and life plans. They only deal with that. They don't usually include any sort of liability coverage. So that's again an area that I don't specialize.
They
Unfortunately,
are
I don't
global. So
specialize.
if you're American living in France, for example, and you spend a few months back in the States at some point, that you're still covered under the same policy.
I think you were asking about liability, but in terms of
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
asking about healthcare. Again, with these global health plans, they would cover you either globally including or excluding the U.S. If at time of application you include the U.S., then it's going to cover up to 180 days per policy year. If you exclude the U.S., they'll usually cover, could be 30 days, could be 60 days of emergency only treatment in the United States. So if you're going back to the U.S. for a short trip, maybe up to 2 weeks, they would cover hospital only emergency care. If you're going beyond that, maybe you get travel insurance plan that can cover you back to the U.S. Or you can, at renewal, you can request to expand your coverage to include the U.S. But I should also mention that if anytime, once you have a global health care plan put in place and you want to improve benefits, such as expanding the area coverage, lowering the deductible, adding outpatient or some, going to a higher level of coverage, then it will be subject to medical underwriting and questions. So you may, or, if you've developed a pre-existing condition, you're not in good health, and they would not allow you to change the policy. They're always willing to reduce benefits without medical evidence, or lower the coverage area, but improving the coverage is always subject to underwriter approval and underwriting.
Thank
But
you.
on the liability front, it's not something that I can comment on.
Okay. So next question is, can policies apply to foreign national spouse?
Excuse me, what's that?
Would a global policy that an expat takes out, could it include their foreign national spouse?
Excuse me, definitely yes. Yes.
Great. So it's a question about retiring in Spain, which is, I read the other day, Spain is the number one sort of destination in Europe at the moment for Americans moving to Europe, having taken over from Portugal. And so I'm interested in retirement in Spain. Are the plans your company represents compliant with the non-lucrative visa requirements? What that means is that, for a Spanish residency visa, and this happens in quite a lot of countries, when you arrive, you need private medical insurance until a certain length of time you can access the state healthcare system. And I'm sure they are because it's a private medical insurance. But I guess that might be a question for an immigration specialist, unless you know about that, the Spain's non-lucrative visa. Oh, you're muted. Let's have a look.
Okay, sorry. So again, just because I missed a bit. What was the question again?
Yeah, so it's about, I'm not sure if you've come across this, but some countries, including Spain, some of the residency visas that Americans can access require you to have private medical insurance to when you arrive in the country for a period of time and before you can access the national healthcare system they have. So, do your plans, are they compliant within the rules of, particularly
Yeah,
the visa in Spain?
yeah. We've had some of our plans which have been accepted by Spain.
Yeah.
Usually, it's with a plan that would have a zero deductible. For some reason, they want that. And yeah, they will accept the global healthcare, certainly the Cigna plan that we work with. Um, and but again, with these, I should mention with these international health insurance plans, they kind of expected that you're not getting them for 2 or 3 months. You should be getting them for at least a year or more. But after a year, you can cancel the coverage uh, without any issues. Usually, if you're canceling before the year's up, you give them 2 weeks notice. But if there's been some claiming, they'll probably want the rest of the year's premium. But yeah, we do have some clients that just get international health care for a year and then they just go on. They cancel because they go on the local coverage or they get covered by an employer.
Fantastic. Thank you. One question: does any provider besides Cigna have no age limit at entry?
That I've seen, no. That
No.
I've found, no. They all, pretty much all, most of them have an age limit entry. Like we work with Allianz, they have a age 69 is the last age you can get into it. Um, yeah, pretty much no. I mean, yeah, to my knowledge, the ones that I would want to deal with, yeah,
Yeah.
they have
Okay.
that age limit.
But Cigna do though, so that's
They
useful.
will, yeah, they can, like, if you as long as you're in okay health, you can pass the medical underwriting. You could be 80 years old or 90,
Yeah.
and get, but obviously it's going to be not inexpensive, but we can work with that client, and we can often obtain a discount if they're getting a quote via our
Um,
firm.
so leading on from that, somebody says, do do the companies you use publish their underwriting criteria?
The insurers, no, they never. They never publish what their underwriting criteria are. Yeah,
Okay.
they keep that close to their vest. Probably because they don't want the other insurance providers to know. But um, yeah, it's
So,
not something they
uh,
publish.
next question then. Eric says, if one is moving close to the US, such as Mexico, is preserving Obamacare an option?
Well, I can't really comment on domestic healthcare because I don't deal in that space, but they'd have to ask their underwriter. I mean, certainly if you can do it, go for it. Certainly if you're a retired expat, you're over 65, you can retain I'm pretty sure you can retain your Medicare. You might even get some sort of a top up for it as well, but still get the expat coverage and exclude the US. But yeah, it really depends on the insurer that you're dealing with in US. I couldn't really provide much more
Okay.
info on that.
So somebody says some countries, for example, France and Greece, charge a tax on medical insurance. Does that apply in these policies?
Unfortunately, yes. So with our, some of these underwriters, insurers, they will include the tax in their premium.
I see.
There's very few countries where that is the case, but Europe is one of them. Yeah.
Is there any long-term care insurance for expats?
No, unfortunately, I wish there was, but not that I've seen. Yeah, like someone needs to go to a long-term care facility. Yeah, and that could be. I know it. I have a father-in-law that's going through that right now, and it's like for a good private one, it's like 17,000 per month. It's crazy, but unfortunately, I haven't seen long-term care added to as a separate policy. I mean, could be some nursing care, but it's very basic outside of. It has to be like registered nurse, and that's usually not really. That's a different animal from long-term care. So sorry, no. Not that I've seen.
Um, so how do you get insurance for the first 45 days after moving during the
Oh,
waiting
no,
period?
sorry. Yeah, I should have explained that better. So you can, if you're in the United States now, you're in your home country, essentially, call that the United States. You you can apply up to 45 days prior to going abroad. But if you're going abroad, you can apply you can apply right away and get coverage started right away. But they just, if you're like 6 months from going out abroad from the US, you can still get the quote and save it and then reactivate it anytime down the road. Obviously, the premium could have changed by then, your age get older, but the insurers will generally not let you apply and go through the underwriting process um, until you're 45 days out from going abroad. And generally, you'll have the start date on the day you leave the US. But again, if you're already outside the US, no problem. You can get a quote and apply right then and there, right via
Yeah.
our website, in fact, or
Similar
fill in
question.
the form that we have online and go that route.
A similar question because I think you sometimes need to show the your policy to
I
get your
know.
visa.
Yeah,
And
that's true. Yeah, and uh, it is tricky. We can try to work through that depending on the insurer and where you're going. But again, and there's it's something we'd have to work with the client and the insurer on an individual basis. Because I know, yeah, they to get the visa, and again, unfortunately, a lot of countries are requiring it. They might want 6 months in advance. They want proof of coverage. But again, with these insurers, they don't want to be seen as covering a U.S. citizen who's staying in the U.S. It's only for expats who are
yeah,
going to be living abroad, coming abroad, and address abroad. So,
makes sense. Yeah. So here's a question. Could you speak from your experience of a situation, if you've come across a situation of an expat moving abroad with life insurance already in place in the US, experiencing a death while living abroad? Have you seen whether there might be issues with cashing out life insurance policies in the event of a death abroad when the policy's in the US?
I've never had a client that is where that has occurred, so I couldn't really comment on it. And again, I'm not an expert in domestic policies in the U.S., so um, yeah, I would. You really have to look at the fine print, ask the insurer prior to going. Get it in writing from the insurer and from the broker that you purchased the policy with. Um, they should still cover you, but especially if it's like a whole life policy, but you just never know. But it's just one of those situations where you have to check the fine print, get it in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody asks, can you get insurance? And again, I think you've covered this, but can you get insurance for example, 4 months in the US, 4 months New Zealand, 4 months India? But I guess a global policy you mentioned that includes the US should provide that as long as you're not resident in the US. Is
Yeah,
that
that's
right?
a great question. Thank you. Because we often get people that are not going to be in one expat destination. So for most insurers, you need to tell them where you're going to spend the most time in outside the US because they need to base the premium based on that destination country. But it's okay if you move from, if you're going to be traveling around and, spending 3 months here, 6 months there, as long as you're not spending more than 100 days back in the US. And again, if you're going to be spending more than like a few weeks in the US, you should probably get a plan that includes the US. But yeah, that's not an issue. I know it can be difficult, but you kind of have to tell them, here's where I expect to spend the most time. Here's maybe where I have a virtual address or physical address outside of the US. But you're free to travel throughout the world
So we've got
outside the
several
US.
questions from Eliza.
Oh, hi,
First
Liz.
one is drug coverage, pharmaceuticals covered along with medical outside the US?
Yeah, if you get certainly if you're in a hospital and you get just hospital only care, they would be covered in a hospital. If you get outpatient modules, then they would have some sort of pharmaceutical medication care out for medical for drug care outside the U.S. The more comprehensive or level of coverage that you get, the higher the drug coverage. But again, I would note if some of these medications, even outside the U.S., can be very expensive. So there's another potential reason why you might want to get like that platinum or higher level of coverage, which has an unlimited maximum for medications, whereas the lower levels might only cover it to 3,000 or maybe 10,000, for example, depending on the plan.
And she also says, we won't be moving for several years, but you offer travel insurance. Do you offer travel insurance for shorter trips?
Yeah, we refer to a provider via our website on a referral basis where they can get travel insurance for short trips. Yeah.
That's it.
Usually up to they could do it almost up to a year, but it's emergency only. And so we just refer to a brokerage in the US that we work with. And it's on our website under international travel insurance.
That's at expatfinancial.com.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. If I get a healthcare policy with medical evac, will the policy cover only an evacuation from the resident country? So, for example, my country of residence is Switzerland, but if I got sick in Bali and Indonesia and needed a medical evac, will the cost be covered for that as well?
I mean, these for the expat health plans, if you get evacuation coverage, it's covering you wherever you might be at that particular point. It's not based on the premium is based on you being in Sweden, but if you're traveling to, it could be Cambodia and you're in some remote area and you get a medical condition that can't be treated locally, you need to be evacuated to the nearest center of medical excellence. Could be, for example, Bangkok, for example, or Singapore. Then that insurer should definitely cover that, I would say, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah. A couple of we're sort of more or less out of time. There are a couple more great questions here if you've got 5 more minutes.
Of course. Oh, of course.
One is if I got a Sigma plan for a year, then cancelled and opted for a private local plan, I guess after moving abroad, am I prohibited from signing up to Cigna again if I was unhappy with the local plan?
Yeah, you're not prohibited as long as you're in OK Health at the time of application, no problem. Yeah, they're more than happy to have you back, hopefully via our website. Again, as long as you're in OK Health, you can get approved.
Yeah. Let's just do one more. Are some countries easier or harder to get insurance for? I guess different countries of residence.
Yes, I mean there are some countries. A good question that, like, if you're going to UAE, we wouldn't be able to assist you. You'd have to get a local plan there. So there are a bunch of countries. Certainly, if it's in a sanctioned country, it's not going to be possible. Like you're going to Iran, for example, or North Korea or something like that. But if you're going to certain countries, such as the UAE, for example, we wouldn't be able to assist you. You'd have to get a local plan, and that's where they really, they have heavy regulations where they only let expats purchase a locally admitted policy in that destination. But we can refer you to brokers that in a place like that where you can get a locally compliant plan that will, obviously approve your visa. Yeah. So there are a few countries where it is not impossible to get individual coverage.
Okay, well, I think, as always, if you have individual questions, reach out to David via the Expat Financial website, expatfinancial.com.